Good morning, and thank you for tuning in for our fourth and final part of the Homeownership in America, Prioritizing Attainability in 2021 event series. My name is Josh Resnik, and I'm CQ Roll Call's publisher, as well as Chief Content Officer for our parent company, Fiscal Note. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Manufactured Housing Institute, for making this event series possible. I'm joined today by their CEO, Leslie Gooch. Good morning, Leslie.
Thank you, Josh, and welcome back, everyone, to the final segment of our virtual series. The Manufactured Housing Institute is the only national trade association that represents all segments of the factory-built housing industry, and we are pleased to partner with CQ Roll Call to focus on attainable homeownership in America. As the nation continues to suffer from a wide-scale housing shortage, the demand for attainable homeownership has never been greater. During the first two parts of our series, we heard from Representatives Steve Stivers and Kathleen Rice about how the federal government is looking to ways to reduce barriers to attainable homeownership. In part three, a panel of experts discussed the challenges for the availability of attainable homeownership and how policymakers can contribute to solutions to these challenges. In today's final episode, Lopa Kolluri, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Housing and the Federal Housing Administration at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, will be joining us to share the work that the administration is undertaking to support increasing the supply of attainable housing. We are thrilled for Ms. Kolluri to be joining us in June, which the President has designated as National Homeownership Month. In his proclamation, the President called on HUD to continue to advance affordable and sustainable homeownership throughout our nation. We look forward to hearing about the actions that HUD is taking to support affordable homeownership options, including fulfilling their statutory obligations to facilitate the availability of manufactured housing. MHI believes that manufactured housing is a critical part of this discussion and is an important element to increasing the supply of attainable homeownership. In fact, HUD is the primary regulator for manufactured housing, and HUD has the statutory duty to facilitate the availability of affordable manufactured homes and to increase homeownership for all Americans. Manufactured housing offers value to consumers because of technological advancements and cost savings that are associated with the factory-built process, and because of the efficiencies that come with our federal building code, the HUD code. Again, I want to thank our speakers throughout this series for sharing their insights and their suggestions for solutions. And thank you to CQ Roll Call for highlighting this critically important topic. I'm excited for this conversation, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. As Leslie mentioned, to kick off part 4 of our series, we're thrilled to be joined by HUD's Lopa Kolluri. Good morning, Lopa, and thank you for speaking with us today as we wrap up our event series on this important issue. Let's go ahead and dive in. Our nation faces a serious affordable housing crisis, which has only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis. What are HUD's priorities in addressing the significant shortage of quality, affordable housing?
Thank you, Josh. This is a really important topic, so I'm glad that we can spend a few minutes to focus on it. We have an unprecedented opportunity to make change in the housing space. We have a bold agenda that focuses on 3 different priorities that President Biden and Secretary Fudge have laid out specifically as it relates to housing. The first is accelerating the COVID-19 recovery. And so we are focused on addressing the urgent and immediate needs that families have as they recover from the crisis. The second is advancing racial equity. As President Biden and Secretary Fudge have made it clear, we must combat the systemic barriers that stand in the way of achieving fairness and equity for underserved communities as well as communities of color. And third is climate resiliency. The administration is focused on aggressively combating one of the greatest threats, I believe, to our well-being, to the individual and family's well-being, and that is climate change. President Biden's proposed Americans Job Plan has a set of robust, impactful proposals that will help us address these key priorities for both the nation's recovery as well as addressing the nation's housing needs. Josh, across the country, 11 million people pay more than half of their income on rent, and 3 million families with children under the age of 6 reside in homes with lead. We have thousands of working families that are displaced every year as a result of extreme weather conditions, which is fueled by the climate change crisis or climate change. And we've got millions of families that continue to face ever increasing barriers to homeownership and to housing, to accessing housing. The American Jobs Plan is going to will invest $150 billion in HUD programs, which is going to provide us with the tools and the programs that we need to build and modernize our affordable housing stock and to create sustainable places to live across the country. And then when you pair this investment with expansion of tax credits and other programs that will really enable greater levels of affordability that are needed for families and individuals to live in high opportunity places across the country. I want to highlight a couple of one component of the American Jobs Plan, which is focused on housing and which is specific to our discussion, and that is the goal to produce and preserve more than 1 million homes. So affordable housing often requires multiple layers of government financing to make happen. The Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration is proposing a historic $35 billion investment in the Home Investment Partnership Program and a $45 billion investment in the National and Housing Trust Fund to address housing in communities across the country. So together with the expansion of the low-income housing tax credits and the innovative tax credit program through the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, we will produce and preserve more than 1 million affordable homes for low, very low, and extremely low income families. The American Jobs Plan will also augment project-based rental assistance, which is for privately owned rental housing. This president has proposed an initial $2 billion investment, which will extend housing opportunities even more to communities. The Office of Housing and the Federal Housing Administration, FHA, which is the organization that I lead at HUD, will play a large role in developing the solutions to addressing the affordable housing crisis. Through FHA's single-family program and multifamily mortgage insurance, we have the ability at FHA to make a significant impact. And it's not just through our insurance programs. We're focused on our work in the multifamily assisted housing programs. We are engaged with the nation's housing counseling agencies, and they're equally critical. So these programs are equally critical, in addition to FHA, to promoting equity, accessibility, and affordability. And a comment about the manufacturing housing industry. We are the way in which housing engages the manufacturing housing industry will be a critical component to affordability. It's important that HUD keep pace with today's market, and that we update the manufacturing code on a regular basis. So I want to thank the Manufacturing Housing Institute for spearheading this series, because manufactured homes are going to offer a substantive way to begin to address the issue of housing affordability.
Home ownership is a critical driver of economic mobility for families and entire communities. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, barriers to home ownership were already impacted by lack of affordable housing and growing student loan debt, among others. How will HUD address these issues so that Americans can achieve the dream of home ownership?
I think this is a very important question, and even more so within the context of June's National Homeownership Month. This year, National Homeownership Month will serve as an important platform for HUD to amplify its efforts. As Secretary Fudge mentioned in her recent congressional testimony, that this administration is determined to provide every person with a fair chance to secure a safe, affordable, and dignified place that they could call home. Home is an anchor in which a person can succeed. A home is an anchor that we need, or that families need to succeed, whether it be rental housing or home ownership. Stable, affordable housing serves as the foundation on which working families and their lives build their lives and invest in their children's future. The dream of home ownership and the security and the wealth creation that comes along with it has really slipped out of the reach of many American families, and particularly low-income households and those people of color continue to face great barriers to affordable housing. And so those barriers threaten the financial security, and they stand in the way of their ability to pursue educational opportunities, employment opportunities, and stand in the way of being able to make critical choices with regards to healthcare and saving for the future. The president's budget, the president's fiscal year 2022 budget, released on May 28th, lays the foundation for a stronger and more equitable infrastructure for housing to support and to help communities thrive and to give every person an opportunity to get ahead. The president's budget proposes includes a $100 million set aside for homeownership assistance initiative that provides funding to states and localities to support sustainable home ownership. The budget also proposes a home equity accelerator pilot program, which will test new loan products that are designed to lower barriers to homeownership for first-time, first-generation homeowners. From an FHA standpoint, we want to see the flow of additional financing go into low-cost markets. We believe that that's where the smaller mortgages can really help families to get started on a path to homeownership. One way to do this is for FHA, and this is where our efforts are focused, is to expand the footprint of lending institutions to offer FHA insured mortgages, especially for large national and regional banks, which we've seen pull back in recent years. So we want to see them come back and be part of our space and enhance and increase their FHA lending. I mentioned earlier that we need to build the capacity of our housing counseling network. And this is important because we want to support renters, right? Renters who are ready to become homeowners. And so that's going to also be a key focus for us. You asked, Josh, about student loan debt. The barriers to homeownership for student loan debt is something that we're working on aggressively, and we're looking to quickly resolve now. Based on the data that we're seeing from the National Mortgage Database, 36% of FHA borrowers have student loan debt. 45% of FHA first-time home buyers have student loan debt. And so we absolutely need to address FHA's student loan debt calculation policies that may be artificially inflating the debt-to-income ratio for borrowers who might be otherwise creditworthy. So this is an urgent issue. It's a priority for my team. It's one that I believe that we can accomplish quickly. And then finally, I think it's important that we take a comprehensive approach to creating and improving down payment assistance programs. These are programs that are important to provide federal support to those that want to buy their first home, but may not have access to the savings or even generational wealth that we see that the middle income families and higher income families can tap into. And so it's really important for us to focus on that. So we'll continue to broaden and improve our nation's housing stock, and we want to find ways in which we can expand the factory built and the manufactured housing as an affordable housing solution to both suburban and to rural areas.
Thank you. I know you recognize the importance of manufactured housing, which remains the largest form of unsubsidized affordable housing in the U.S. to help address the shortage of quality, attainable housing in the country. Can you share with us some of the actions you've taken to ensure this affordable homeownership option is considered during discussions about affordable homeownership?
Sure, absolutely. look, we have 22 million people that are residing in manufactured housing, and the industry employs tens of thousands of Americans nationwide. So manufactured housing must be a critical part of the conversation and the solution. But I do believe there needs to be a broader conversation about manufactured housing supply. It needs to not just be about supply, but it also needs to be about getting access and providing access to affordable mortgage financing for manufactured housing. So we have what I believe will be a complementary set of initiatives within the Office of Housing. The Office of Manufactured Housing is within the Office of Housing, and that's the entity that's responsible for administering the manufacturing home construction and safety standards. These are the guiding regulations to ensuring safety and sounding of the nation's manufactured housing stock. Our Office of Single Family is the one that's responsible for the two programs, Title I and Title II insurance programs, and those provide FHA-insured affordable financing for manufactured homes. So it really means that the two offices will be working together to ensure that we support the manufacturing industry with both both on the regulatory side as well as on the financing side. So my point is that it's important that manufactured homes must and continue to be central and part of the conversations and discussions that we're having and solutions to solving the nation's affordable housing crisis and addressing the shortage that exists in our country.
Across the country, there are countless examples of state and local zoning, planning, and development restrictions that either severely limit or outright prohibit the development of affordable housing, both multifamily and home ownership. How will HUD ensure that states and localities are not discriminating against affordable home ownership options such as manufactured housing?
Yes. So, exclusionary zoning is one of those issues that we need everyone to address, right? It's not just a federal issue. It's certainly not just a federal issue. So whether it be Congress, the state, local governments, HUD and other federal agencies need to come together to address the issue of exclusionary zoning. We at HUD will continue to amplify and continue to serve as a platform, continue to use its platform to amplify the fact that exclusionary zoning is discriminatory. And it's contrary to giving Americans an equal opportunity to the American dreams. The American Jobs Plan includes an important component for HUD to incentivize the removal of exclusionary zoning and harmful land use policies. For decades, exclusionary zoning laws, whether they be minimum lot sizes, mandatory parking requirements, prohibitions on multifamily housing, these have just led to inflated housing costs, housing and construction costs, and they've essentially resulting in locking out families out of areas that with more opportunities. President Biden's plan seeks to help jurisdictions to reduce those barriers and to produce affordable housing and to expand choices for people with low and moderate income homes. The American Jobs Plan will create a $5 billion incentive program that will award flexible and attractive funding to jurisdictions so that they can take concrete steps and reduce those barriers to affordable housing production.
Many states require municipalities to provide affordable housing. Quality and safety are also important factors, and manufactured housing is the only form of housing regulated by a federal building code. Will HUD finalize additional updates to that code?
So the updates to the manufacturing home construction and safety standards or the code itself, the code is a top priority for me. And our Office of Manufactured Housing is now working with the necessary government rulemaking to process the issues and propose a set of updates. The previous administration undertook an update last fall, which was a small step to towards reducing the backlog that we have of updates that need to happen. But we need to update the codes and be doing it on a regular basis, and providing to be able to provide meaningful change and increase efficiency for manufactured housing and alleviate, a lot of the cumbersome limitations that the industry may be facing, and those really just transfer on to the consumers. So it's really important that we tackle, and we're focused on this, the next set of proposed changes that will continually provide the updates to the rules and give the reliability to the industry, and then that reliability is just going to really support, I think, the industry and its ability to produce housing for low-income individuals and families who need and desire manufactured housing.
According to the Urban Institute, quote, "The gap in the home ownership rate between Black and white families in the U.S. is bigger today than it was when it was legal to refuse to sell someone a home because of the color of their skin," unquote. Addressing systemic barriers to minority home ownership is imperative, and increasing the supply of quality, affordable housing must be an integral part of the effort. How will HUD work to address the racial home ownership gap?
Josh, Secretary Fudge has made it clear that reducing the racial home ownership gap and the wealth gaps, which have persisted, as you say, for decades, is a high priority for HUD. Look, facts will be our guide. We will work to eliminate the harmful legacy policies that have contributed to these gaps. For most Americans, owning a home is still the best way to build wealth and to build equity. We at HUD, we as a nation must take bold steps to help people realize their dream of home ownership. We will ensure that FHA continues to be a consistent source of credit to support home ownership for communities of color, and to work across the housing system to promote and advocate for policy changes that really help break down the barriers and help more families purchase their first home. The stark reality is that people of color continue to feel and continue to suffer the discrimination when buying homes, when securing loans, and having their homes appraised. That is why HUD will work relentlessly to combat the systemic racism from our housing market through strong enforcement of the Fair Housing Act.
Well, that's all the time that we have today. On behalf of CQ Roll Call and MHI, thank you, Lopa, for joining us.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. For CQ Roll Call, I'm Josh Resnik. Have a great day.